Hi everyone, I'm Matt Gard. I'm the founder here at Foundry Co. And today I have Corey Hart, who's the chapter manager of Startup Grind here in Grand Rapids. So Corey, you just want to introduce yourself. Like, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, so name's Corey Hart. In this respect, yeah, I'm the Startup Grind chapter director for Grand Rapids, Michigan. We are the world's largest network of tech entrepreneurs, founders, etc. We have almost 3 million members around the world. We have 600 chapters. We're in 125 plus countries. And It's been an exciting time in this last few months, just because while like physical supply chains are shrinking, the globalization of ideas, money, funding, innovation, that stuff is just going gangbusters. So it's really fun to see that. Despite on the backdrop of the reality of COVID and the pandemic, so there's some real hardships among our community. But then, of course, as I mentioned, we like to see all the collaboration that's happening across the planet. So, uh, yeah, the what my role is with Startup Grind is I'm here in Michigan to help boost the entrepreneurial and the tech ecosystem and in whatever way that it needs. And part of it is being the connective tissue between all of the really great resources that are already available in the state. But then there's some things that are lacking in the state, like follow-on funding. So my role is to help bring in some of that needed resource from outside of the region. So
Sweet. So I guess yeah, to go follow up with that. So I mean, what is like? So you mentioned a lot in that. Like, what is Startup Grind in a nutshell? Is it just like I know, particularly from my point of view, it's always been like these events that they're hosting, and I know you're doing a lot of those virtually now. Like, what is like I guess yeah, what is Startup Grind in a nutshell, especially when it comes from like the local part of it to like the national part of it.
Well, Startup Grind is 10 years old now, and it originated because there was a startup founder who was crying himself to sleep, wondering, like, am I the only one? Um, and so he was like, hey, you know what? There's probably more like me that just need some. We just need to know that we're not alone. And That's how it began. So a lot of events, in-person events. That was like 10 years. The last 3 years has been about scaling globally and really trying to connect different ecosystems. And Now that we've pivoted to all digital, all online, we now have like a membership program. There's like free membership, then there's like startup memberships, etc. We have a startup program. We have conferences that like pre-COVID had like 10,000 attendees like every year. Um, but yeah, we've totally pivoted to totally digital, and really we're kind of like you can consider us a pre accelerator. So like if you're just kind of like out there, you're like, yeah, like I've got a great idea. I have like I have 10% of what I need as far as team or resources or idea. You come to one of our meetings and then it's like, oh, thank God I'm not alone. Like we still do that. Um, or you might have 95% and you're like, I just need that technical co-founder. Like where is that person? Um, and so we just we're that connective tissue, and we're just doing better. We're doing a better job of that now than ever because we have turned it from a really like locally focused or regionally focused connective tissue thing to being a globally connective tissue thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. So I guess on that note, so I guess yeah, if you're brand new to entrepreneurship or even just like semi interested in entrepreneurship, is like going like participating in Startup Grind like where like the place to go? I guess yeah, where I guess even like if you're brand new to an ecosystem, like where can I connect with Startup Grind for the first time?
Yeah, so startupgrind.com is a good place to go. Now, because everything is virtual and online, we have like upwards of 400 events a month that are online, and then of course they're all on like YouTube, and like they're all archived as well. Um, and so like What's really interesting is like in every ecosystem there is an Airbnb, right? So like in Pakistan, there's the Airbnb of Pakistan. They're like in the MENA region. So we're talking like Jordan. Uh, there's an Airbnb there. There's incredible capital in all of these different places. Like Nigeria has incredible startups and incredible founders doing incredible things, especially focused on female founders. So the stories are incredible, and learning through stories. And I know that you're a big believer in this because you're a big storyteller. Learning through other people's stories and experiences is just so powerful. And there's no better time than now, one, to start something, two, to fund it, three, to scale it. Um, Especially as the whole planet has had to um, think about like, who's my customer? Like, am I still relevant?
Yeah.
Big questions like that. So, yeah, just plug in at startupgrind.com. No matter what topic you're interested in, there's somebody talking about it. Um, yeah, it's pretty incredible body of knowledge there to tap into.
Yeah. So you mentioned, okay, so you mentioned, yeah, right, there's different types of startups all over the world, which always, I think, being in Michigan or in these smaller startup ecosystems, you don't always get to recognize, yeah, there's like a ton of different things out there, and every startup community is a little bit different and has their different quirks. So how does like a startup grind, obviously, right, you guys are the, this connector nationally, but then does each like startup grind chapter have a different flavor? Like, I guess, yeah, different like quirk to it depending on the local region. Like you mentioned Nigeria being really focused on like female founders. Like how does that all like work on that part of it?
Yeah, so the individual chapter directors, like we're an entrepreneurial network. And so what's really interesting, what I really enjoyed when I joined, and I'm a fairly young like chapter director, so I've only been around since like December of 2019. But after you go through the vetting process, which is basically making sure you're not an asshole, um, they say, all right, it's your ecosystem. What does it need? You tell us. How can we help you? And so every ecosystem is different, obviously. So um, right now, I've been doing this really fun thing. It's more of like a global thing, but every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm doing an event where I'm checking in with a different chapter director from around the planet and learning about different ecosystems. Because like there's a lot of capital, people are sitting on capital. Like investors are like, I need to invest this capital. I didn't raise a fund to sit on top of it, you know? And so I call this thing hunting for silver linings. And it's really fun to talk to all these individual chapter directors because, like you said, every individual ecosystem is different. Um, and it's been really interesting learning about the different sectors that each ecosystem is like specialized in. So I spoke to this gentleman, he's a chapter director in Plovdiv, Bulgaria. And Bulgaria is right behind like Moscow and Ukraine as far as innovation and especially for tech talent. So they do a lot of exporting of talent, right?
Yeah.
If you want to build something, digitally, you might think of India, you might think of, Ukraine or whatever, but Bulgaria is huge in this. Um, I spoke to, like I mentioned, Nigeria earlier. So, just, outside of the big, like safari park there's just wild tech innovation going on, which surprised me, but I was excited to hear about it. Talked to the chapter director from Urbana-Champaign, like Illinois, just the other day. And that is like they basically invented the internet, right? So it's like, okay, but also a very small ecosystem. And they do a lot with agri-tech and stuff. And so ag tech there is like on fire right now. And learning about these individual stories is really great. What I'm thinking about doing for specifically Michigan and the Great Lakes region is really just kind of championing what we're good at. And we're good at a lot of things. Just because we're not on the coast doesn't mean that we can't kill it in innovation. And we've got a lot of strong points. And so my role here in Grand Rapids and West Michigan, and then what I'm calling the Great Lakes region, which includes like Chicago, like even down to like St. Louis, all the way around to like Waterloo, Toronto, up and over around like Green Bay and then back around. Like we're kind of like the best kept secret on the planet, you know?
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of opportunities, especially in that region. And it's been cool to see from my perspective, especially Chicago really taking it to the next level recently. St. Louis has definitely got some things going on. Like, and then like you're seeing like Madison and Milwaukee step up. Like, there's been really a lot of dynamics happening. I think Michigan's just now starting to get it going. Like Duo and Detroit getting acquired, and Sky Specs over there too. There's so many good things happening. So I guess one last question for you is, you've only been doing this for like December 2019, so you're still like new to this, but or at least newness to Startup Grind. Like, what's one story that you like that was like super memorable and that you like love about Startup Grind?
Well, okay, so like I'm only like you said, fairly new dude to this particular ecosystem. I was living in California for about 10 years before I moved back to Michigan, and so the last year that was in the Bay Area, getting plugged into that ecosystem, like the ecosystem of ecosystems, and just really understanding how important it is to just to be open and connect folks, and just and um, without that, without the what's in it for me shit, because that can just get in the way of so much, prosperity. So, um, and the best thing that I've been able to offer is just that space for people to come to and be like, oh, I'm not alone. This is great. And then when they're in the room together, the founder is able to rub elbows, and then that's when true like connection and innovation happens. Is when founders get in the room, or not just founders, but just people in general, just doing stuff, curious about each other, right?
Yep.
So I've had members of my community, which is still very small, but they've landed huge contracts with international retailers, like that happened last month. And this guy was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, this is really great, thank you so much, Corey. And it's not necessarily that I didn't do anything specific except for like help lift him up, right? And
Yep.
tell him, and be like, oh well, have you thought about this, and have you thought about that, and let's grab coffee. We had another startup that tried to fundraise for 2 years in Michigan, nothing. uh, 6 hours basically in San Francisco at the Startup Grind international conference, raised 250K. And that's just about like being around density, right? Because we just
Yep.
don't have the density here. So and that was pre-COVID. Post-COVID, now it's just so much easier to get into, like it's like we have another member, they're participating in an incubator in France. Like they're
Okay.
here, but they're participating in an incubator in France, because you can do that now.
Right.
Pre-COVID, you had to actually be in France to do it and speak French. Now you don't. You just have to have a really great idea. Um, and then I have another person who heard from my little global tour that I'm doing with all these meetings. I talked to the chapter director for Santiago, Chile, and this person found out that, oh yeah, okay, so if I want to go and start something in Chile, they'll give me a visa. I can hang out in Santiago, and they're going to introduce me to like an accelerator and give me money for my startup. So they went down there and did that.
Yeah.
That's not something you can do here. You don't just walk into a building and be like, yes, I would like to have residency in this state here, and it'd be great if you give me $50,000 to like prove out my idea. We don't do that, but Santiago, Chile does that every day, all day long. So those are a couple stories, and I have more, but and it's just been really fun to see this stuff happening.
I love it. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing some of those stories, and just sharing like the impact that I know you're making in West Michigan and Great Lakes region. And thanks for sharing all this like great wisdom.
Well, I have to thank you particularly because you're one of the first people in the ecosystem that was like, "Hey, yeah, I'll take this meeting. I'll have coffee with this guy. Who the hell is Corey? I'll find out." Because we can be a pretty defensive, like, "What are you doing in my yard?" Kind of ecosystem. So, I appreciate your mindset, your leadership for the region. It definitely moves the dial. So, thanks for moving the dial,
Yeah, I am just doing the right thing, just being a human.
man. Doing the thing.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Yeah.